My friends, welcome to this episode of the Outdoor Gear Review. I hope you all are doing well. What I have here is the brand new version of the NatureHike Ranch Fire 4 to 6 person tent. It was late last year. I was waterproof testing the original version when I received an email from NatureHike. They told me that a new version was coming. It's been almost an entire year, and here it is. Anyways, folks, this episode is all about the Ranch Fire new version. Let's go ahead and let's get to it. Before I do a component breakdown of this tent, let's just go ahead and let's talk about the older version compared to the newer version for a second. The old version of this tent was a square-shaped teepee tent that also featured a bug inner that you can attach. That way you can stay inside of the tent and be bug-free. The new version of this tent is no longer square-shaped, but rather octagon-shaped. There is a tent inner, but it is sold separately. An additional option for this tent is a floor. That too is sold separately. Those, my friends, are the biggest differences between the two tents. The original was a 4-person tent. This one here, the company says 4 to 6 person. The first one was a square shaped. It included the bug inner. The new one is octagon shaped. It does not include the inner, and it does not include the optional ground sheet. You have to buy every component separately, and I find that to be rather strange. There is one more difference, and we'll talk about it later on in this episode, and that is price. Anyways, when it comes to the Ranch Fire Octagon version, here are the 3 components. We have the fly and the pole, tent stakes, and so on. Here we have the optional tent inner, and here we have the optional floor mat. Again, all of these components are sold separately. They are no longer included. Starting with the storage bag here for the teepee tent, we have 2 grab handles, 1 on each side. We have 2 handles in the middle, and we also have 2 compression straps. Additionally, we have a draw pull here in the corner. On the inside, we have setup instructions. Here we have the tent with a compression strap, a high quality compression strap. Taking a look at the tent stakes now, this little bag here is unbelievably heavy, shockingly heavy. So what we have here is a fire jack for the stove, because this is a hot tent. Here we have the tent stakes, and there are a ton of these. I count 19 of these. At the same time, they are quite long, which I appreciate greatly. Lastly, as far as the guy lines go, there are none in this bag, meaning they are already attached to this tent. Here we have the tent pole, which I am glad to see is shock corded. That means breaking this down and putting it up is nice and easy. Up here at the top, we have this metal ring, and that is so that you can attach the inner to it. You can also hang a lantern from this if you want to. I will start off with the ground sheet. Let's take a look at that. I can tell you all that this is huge. And it just barely will come out of this storage bag. I wonder how easy it is to get this back into it. I'm concerned. With the ground mat on the ground, you can see how large this tent is going to be. Overall, the design of this is very simple. It's just a large mat. You have elastic stakeout points in each of the corners. And then with this white material, this is fireproof. This is designed so that your stove can sit on top of this and not burn the floor. Now, unfortunately, nothing here is color coded to match up with the fly. So when you put the fly down on top of this, you have to make sure to get everything into the right position, basically to line up. You would have to have your stove jack over this here so that your stove can go here. If you're not careful, you can very easily get all of this misaligned, which is a shame, because if the company color coded each of the corners here, you could very easily get this set up because each of the points would match. Once you've staked out the tent, made some adjustments, put in the pole, you have to make more adjustments. Okay. This guy line just came off, and that's because the knot was not tied correctly. Luckily, that's a small issue to have, but it's annoying. As far as the features go, this tent has 2 doors. Each door has a storm flap that goes over the zippers. At the top of the door, you have a vent on each side. Around the tent, we have a snow skirt. Each section can be rolled up and stowed out of the way for additional airflow. This tent features 8 guy line points. Speaking of which, they have been reinforced. The same applies to the stakeout points. With the stakeout points, those are adjustable. And that takes us to the hot tent aspect for this tent. On one side, there is a stove jack. And as you can see, a stove jack has been installed, but it has not been cut. With this tent, you receive 2 stove jacks. Neither has been cut, so that you can cut them to fit the stove that you personally use. Because of the placement here on this tent, because this tent is so tall, the average person cannot reach over and make adjustments to this. You either have to unstake the sides and approach, which you may not want to do, especially if it's windy, or you have to go on the inside and basically break the Velcro and make adjustments that way. That is not easy either. The best course of action is to make the adjustments to the stove jack and then erect the tent. Once the tent is up, it's going to be very difficult to make any changes here. As you can see here, the doors have been opened. I went ahead, I opened up one panel. You can also go ahead and open up the second panel if you want to. This is a massive tent, ladies and gentlemen, especially on the outside. But do keep this in mind. While it takes up a ton of space on the inside, it's going to be quite a bit smaller than what you realize. Now that we're inside of this tent, it's amazing. There's an echo inside of this. I kid you not, there is a freaking echo in here. Anyways, on the inside of this tent, the amount of space is limiting. You could have 4 people sleeping inside of this, like on pads, but you couldn't have the wood stove. With the wood stove, I would say 2 people max, 3 in a pinch. You could definitely get 3 people to work, but with that being said, this is going to shine for 2 people or for 1. As far as the features go inside of this, there's not much to talk about. With the vents, they have to be adjusted on the outside. You cannot do that on the inside. The pole here is not telescoping. That means if you have to make any sort of adjustments, if the materials stretch at all, you have to make the adjustments on the outside. You can't simply raise the pole up, which is typically what I like to see. Having a telescoping pole is going to make your life easy when it comes to a hot tent like this. But in this case, you cannot adjust this pole. Here's the stove jack that I spoke of before. Again, if you want to make any sort of adjustments to this, you basically have to do it here. It is not easy to do on the outside. Now let's take a look at the inner. We have a draw pull up here at the top. Here's the inner. We have a corded compression strap, which is garbage. Oh no. I'm trying to stake out this inner, and the elastic knot just came undone. Now you're looking at the tent with the inner installed. Now, unfortunately, because of the limited space on the inside, this is going to be difficult to see. But basically, we have the inner, it attaches to the top and also to the stakeout points. The stakeout points for the fly. You do not have enough tent stakes left over once the tent is set up to stake this out by itself. To access this, we have a 3-way zipper, basically in an upside down T formation. 1 vertical zipper, 2 horizontal. With the inner, this is an interesting shape. You have quite a bit of space here, not so much over here. You have to think about this in the shape of an octagon, but basically cut in half. And that's what you're sleeping in here. Without a doubt, there's plenty of space for 1 person. The second person who's going to be close to this wall, they need to be pretty small to fit over here. You definitely can make this work, but it's not ideal for 2 people. For 1, it's a palace. For 2 people, it's awkward. As far as the dimensions go, this is a little bit difficult to measure because the walls are so steep. So, all right. Maximum height for the inner is 75 inches. Now, of course, that's not usable. So, let's say maybe 62 inches is usable. And of course, it slopes down 43 and so on. For 1 person, there's plenty of space here. You don't have to worry about anything, really. As far as usable width goes, you're looking at 10 feet. So this is certainly long enough, it's wide enough, it's tall enough for 1 person. 2 in a pinch, but this really is ideal for 1. Usable width at the maximum point is right at 4 feet 9 inches. And of course, it slopes upwards. You do have a bathtub floor with this inner, taped seams, and that's it. You do not have mesh pockets or anything like that. In a nutshell, my friends, that is the Ranch Fire Octagon tent. Let's take a second here and let's go over the stats real quick. This is a 3 to 4 season tent. There's enough ventilation here to use it in the summer, and the tent is strong enough to use it in the winter. This is a TP style tent, and it was designed for overlanding, car camping, truck camping, and that's it. The company claims that you can go hiking with this. Forget about it. It's not possible. This tent has 2 doors, and according to the company, it was designed for 4 to 6 people. In my opinion, this makes sense for 2. Anytime a company claims to have a TP tent that's large enough for 4 to 6 to 8 people, question the measurements, because oftentimes it's not true, they're full of crap, they're lying to you. In a pinch, you can have 4 or 5 people in it. But if you have a wood stove and equipment inside of this tent, or even a pile of firewood, the space is going to dramatically drop. With the inner installed, this is good for 1 to 2 people. It's a palace for 1, you can make it work with 2. There's enough space for a wood stove, a pile of firewood, there's enough space for 2 chairs, a table, in addition to the inner and your sleep gear. When the tent is fully set up, it is 98.4 inches tall. It is 157.5 inches wide by 157.5 inches. In other words, this tent is 8.2 feet high, 13.1 feet wide. Those are the maximum dimensions. That's not usable space inside of this tent. When it comes to the materials, you're looking at a 68 denier 210 polyester fly. That features a 3,000 millimeter hydrostatic head rating. The inner features a B3 mesh fabric and polyester material. The mat, which you can purchase additionally, that is a 150 denier Oxford cloth, and that has a waterproof rating of 4,000 millimeters. When it comes to the weight of the system, prepare yourself. It is heavy. The fly weighs 12 pounds. The inner weighs 3.5 pounds. The floor weighs 4.9 pounds. Concerning the price of this system, the fly retails for $280. The inner is $60. The mat is $60. That brings you up to $400 for everything that you see here. Now again, everyone, you could purchase what you want with this system. You do not have to purchase all 3 components. Let's say that you want to purchase the fly and the inner. That would be $340 at full retail price. Since we're talking about the price of the Octagon version, let's talk about the original square version. This is $400 for all of the components. The original version is $180. That's a huge difference, folks. With the original square version, you get everything for that price. The fly, the pole, the stakes, and you also get the inner. I do not believe there's a ground sheet with that tent. As far as the setup process goes, on a scale from like 0 to 10, 0 being the easiest possible, 10 being the most complicated, this is a good 9. Without a doubt, this takes a long time to set up, and it's not especially easy. When it comes to a square teepee tent like the original, it's super simple. You just pull the sides out, stake them out, go to the other side, pull it straight, and then stake it out. With this one here, because it's an octagon shape, there's a lot of leeway for mistakes. You will have to make a ton of adjustments, especially if you want to stake everything together. For an example, with the floor mat, you have to use the same tent stakes as the fly. To get everything to line up perfectly so you can do that, it's not easy. The same applies for the inner. The inner uses the same stakeout points as the fly. So again, everything has to match up perfectly or you're going to have some problems. Ultimately, with this tent, you have a very complicated setup process. You certainly can figure it out, but it's going to take you a long time to get this pitched. Even if you're a master at pitching TP tents, this is going to take you some time. The quality of this tent looks to be very, very good. I looked this over. There's no issues as far as the seam tape goes, no issues with the stitching, no loose threads. Everything looks good. As far as the storage size goes and the weight, this tent is very large. There's a lot of components that take up a ton of space. At the same time, each of those components is very heavy. They are very heavy because the company used polyester for this tent. Now, polyester does a great job of staying taut. It doesn't stretch all that much, especially when you compare that to sil nylon. But the trade-off is that polyester is very thick, it's very heavy. This is a very heavy tent system, no doubt about it. You're not going to go hiking with this, you're not backpacking with this. You're throwing this on an ATV, or you're pulling it out of the trunk of your car or the bed of your truck. That's it. When it comes to the value of this tent, $400. I'm on the fence on this. Yes, this is a big tent. The quality seems to be very good. I will waterproof test it and all that stuff. But it's made from polyester, folks. And you have to keep this in mind. Polyester is a very inexpensive fabric. So $400 for this. Does that make sense? In the grand scheme of TP tents, I would say it makes sense. But if you compare this to the original Ranch Fire Square TP tent, it does not make sense. A question I have for NatureHike is this: why was the inner not included? It was included with the original version, and it's only $180. This one here, it's not included. You have to buy it for an additional $60. I'm not sure if that makes a lot of sense, to be honest. It feels like the company's holding back when they don't need to. I do understand the fact that the company wants you to build out your own system. But again, the fly is $280 plus $60 plus $60. The other tent is $180, includes everything. So to me, it just doesn't add up from a value perspective. Additionally, this tent comes with 19 tent stakes. The inner has none. The floor includes none. I think both the floor and the inner should have their own tent stakes. Anytime that you have to use the same tent stakes for each component, especially with a design like this, you're going to have issues. You're going to have struggles. With the inner that I installed on the inside of this tent, I was just barely able to get it to work with the existing stakeout points from the fly. It just barely worked. What I'm trying to say is this: if the company included more tent stakes, you would be able to stake out every single component independently, and that would be a much easier process than what you have to do here. As far as waterproofing goes, ventilation and airflow, I will be testing these aspects out soon enough, so stay tuned. As soon as possible, I will get this tent out into a rainstorm, and we will see together whether or not it's waterproof. At the same time, we will test for airflow, condensation, and so on. And with all of that being said, I am done, right? I've been working with this tent for hours now. I've been talking for hours. It's amazing what goes into making a simple video like this. Anyways, folks, I'm going to stop talking. Now it's your turn. Comment down below, share your thoughts. What do you all think about the new Ranch Fire tent? If you found this episode helpful, hit the thumbs up. I do appreciate it. Everybody, take care, be well, strength and honor. Bye for now.